The Christmas Letters, Celebrating Advent with Those Who Told the Story First, by Magrey R. DeVega. Chapter 3, Fully Human, Joy in Humility, pages 84 through 89. 3 virtues. Paul is telling us that there is a very clear and compelling remedy for the divisions that would tear us apart, if only all of us would choose to adhere to it. It is a remedy that comes from pursuing these 3 virtues: humility, curiosity, and empathy. Imagine a world that was governed by these 3 virtues. Imagine a Christian community that was governed by these 3 ideals. A posture of humility would remind us that we are no better and no worse than anyone else. Remember that the word humility comes from the Latin word humus, which means ground and earth. To be humble means that we are connected to every other person on earth, interdependent and interconnected with them. Their welfare and well-being are intrinsically tied to yours. We survive and thrive together as a human community beyond nations and nationalities. A grounded, earthly humility would also remind us that we are intrinsically connected to this planet, and we are responsible for its stewardship and care. Not to ravage it for individual consumption, but to preserve its health for the future. An earnest posture of humility would then lead to the value of curiosity. If we come to accept that we are connected to everyone else, then we must conclude that we do not know everything. We can remember that our perspective is not the only one, and not always even the best one or right one. That then ought to drive a spirit of curiosity. It would make us want to learn more about the world than just from within our own assumptions and biases. It means diversifying the sources of your news, puncturing the self-contained bubbles of your own social media networks, and approaching any topic with a desire to understand. It means reading a perspective that is not your own, to remember that gaining understanding of another can be as important as strengthening a conviction within yourself. More important, it is how we grow as a faith community. Ultimately, humility and curiosity lead to the 3rd value, one that is perhaps in the shortest supply of all: empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand a situation through the outlook and experience of another person. It is to recognize that their perspective has been formed by a matrix of personal, social, and cultural forces, just like yours has. The conclusions that have made come from a deep part of who they are and who they understand themselves to be, just like yours have. Their understanding does not need to negate your own. Empathy is risky. It requires vulnerability, transparency, and the possibility of revealing your own biases and prejudices. But ultimately, it is the way to learn to see others as fellow children of God, as people who have more in common with you than you may think. Humility, curiosity, and empathy. And if assuming these postures and adopting these values seem like a position of weakness to you, then that is precisely the point. To live life as God intends, we must empty ourselves in weakness rather than amass greatness through strength. We can do this by having the mind of Jesus, because again, Jesus did this not despite his being equal with God, but because he was God. That means that we can live with humility, curiosity, and empathy because we are made in the image of God, not despite it. Because we are God-breathed, God-inspired, and God-created, we can be humble and obedient to God. Because the church is born of God's Spirit and created for God's purposes, we can be more loving, more compassionate, less power-hungry, less me-centered. Because we are God's people, not in spite of it, we can assume the servant's heart and mind. Philippians, the book of joy. Why is living in the mind of Christ so important to Paul? Ultimately, Paul's command to live with humility, curiosity, and empathy, a spirit of servanthood, is rooted in Paul's central desire to make my joy complete. That is such a beautiful phrase, isn't it? Wouldn't it be wonderful if all of us recognized our mutual capacity to complete one another's joy? After all, this third week of Advent is often called Gaudete Sunday, which is the Latin word for rejoice. It is the week of joy during a season when we are called to rejoice in the arrival of Jesus. In the words of Paul to the Philippians, what would it be like to complete someone else's joy? Maya Angelou said, "When you wish someone joy, you wish peace, love, prosperity, health, happiness, all the good things." It is this kind of joy that is at the heart of Philippians. Paul uses the word joy more times in this letter to the Philippian church than in any other of his letters, and the word rejoice occurs more times in this book than any other book in the New Testament. Here is just a sample. Finally, my brothers and sisters, rejoice in the Lord. To write the same things to you is not troublesome to me, and for you it is a source of steadfastness. Philippians chapter 3, verse 1. Therefore, my brothers and sisters whom I love and miss, who are my joy and crown, stand firm in the Lord. Philippians chapter 4, verse 1. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Philippians 4, verse 4. All of this is surprising, given how unjoyful Paul's circumstances were when he wrote Philippians. He wrote his most joyful letter while imprisoned. There have been a number of theories over the years about where he was imprisoned and what he did to be sentenced there. One of the prevailing theories is that his imprisonment was based on what happened in the very last chapters of the book of Acts, in which he was arrested for preaching the gospel in Jerusalem temple. Acts chapter 21. After being tried and sentenced by Jewish and Roman authorities, he wound up under house arrest in Rome, and it was there, in the most unjoyful of circumstances, that Paul was able to both experience and teach practical lessons on joy to the Christians in Philippi. You may find joy in short supply for yourself these days. You may feel imprisoned, stuck, in a drought, or whatever word you want to use to describe the joyless state of your soul today. Or maybe the greatest obstacle to your joy today is fear. If that's the case, then you are certainly not alone. Just ask Mary.